Hello.
Hello, everyone. I am humbled to be here tonight with this wonderful group of panelists to discuss how the recent events at the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th impacted our communities, what it meant for our multiracial democracy, and how we can heal together as a nation. My name is Lorenzo Lewis, and I am the Director of Disagreement at the Center for Democracy in Deaf America, the CDDA. We planned this event in collaboration with the Center for Black Studies and the Provost Office. So now go ahead and please introduce yourselves and tell the audience about the CDDA and why we've decided to host this event today.
Please go right ahead, Dr. McCaskill.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn McCaskill. I am the director for the Center for Black Deaf Studies. This center is designed to support research, teaching, and education surrounding the area of deaf studies and the Black deaf experience, focusing on the historical, literature, and sociological factors. And we also serve as a resource center to people out there who want to know what it means to learn about Black deaf history, Black deaf culture, Black deaf ASL, the whole Black deaf experience. We also prepare a variety of lectures and videos, like tonight, for example. This is the sort of platform for us to get together and have these conversations about these important issues. So tonight we are collaborating with the CDDA, the Center for Democracy in Deaf America, and we're very excited about tonight's event.
As we are, I'm Dr. Brendan Stern, Director for the Center for Democracy in Deaf America, CDDA. The center was founded just last fall, working with Lorenzo, in fact, and some others at Gallaudet, with the purpose of encouraging healthy, deliberate skills in debate to help our community and beyond through encouraging civic engagement and discourse and debate. So throughout this process, over the last few weeks, we've seen a number of things happening, but last week we saw a very particular experience here that requires discussion to have healthy democracy in America. And it centers a spotlight on race and racism and how the two are juxtaposed. We cannot have one without the other being dealt with. And so I'm honored and humbled to be here with all of you, with your center, co-hosting tonight's event.
Now, can both of you share with us what was going through your mind as you saw both the political violence and domestic terrorism that happened at the U.S. Capitol building? How did it affect you personally?
Well, for me, when I was watching it, I just felt like it was a nightmare. I felt like Pandora's box had been opened, irrevocably opened, and the horrors and evils pouring forth. Just watching that was unbelievable. I could not believe this was happening in America. And the rampant destruction in the US Capitol, profound. And it brought to mind a sense of the need to be able to discuss things. I remember when I was a student in schools for the deaf and different events would happen, we would gather to talk about them and talk through them. And I am thrilled that we are able to host this platform tonight so that we can have this kind of a healthy discussion. And as you've said, we have to bring these tables together and juxtapose them, look at them, examine them together, democracy and race and racism, and if we're going to heal at all. And it's still so hard to believe this has happened at all. And I'm still really puzzling through it.
I feel the same. I feel like it's almost like an onion where there are so many layers to be unpacked. Watching it on the news, I think about my 2 young kids, my wife, truly feeling brokenhearted at the interruption of democracy at work. So, on a personal level, I felt that impact. And in the evening, I was talking with my deaf grandmother who was 93 years old. And she talked about just feeling truly ashamed. Like we are on a sinking ship, her ashen face, just thinking back about the need for freedom and really just what it took for her to get to this country and the idea of democracy and freedom and equality, and thinking, I escaped Germany. I saw the Statue of Liberty, and this is what I came to, and this is where we are today. So, like I said, there's so many layers going into this. I have students and friends reading on social media, and you can see the racial implications of this. And it's just such a multi-layered situation at work, thinking about the way that police treatment of Black individuals is taking place, all the protests that have been happening over the summer. And you just have to think, how many people have to make a choice between their whiteness or their democracy? And you see people choosing their whiteness over democracy. So it really is honestly shaking my faith in America. You see here, I have Obama, I have hope, and I really hang on to his speech that he did back in 2004. There's no red states, there's no blue states, there's no white America, there's no Black America. We are the United States of America. And I find myself questioning that. Was that a naive way of thinking? We really need to unpack that. So, like I said, I'm on this journey unpacking the layers of this onion, and I am curious to see what other panelists will have to say today. And I just want to say what a debt of gratitude for everyone for being willing to be a part of this, and Lorenzo for you for facilitating tonight. So just thank you so much.
And I did want to add to that one more thing, just briefly. What struck me was how the police let that happen. And I contrasted that with BLM. Imagine Black Lives Matter was in that position, how different that would have been. That was just etched on my mind. And I do want to thank you again. I want to thank you also, Lorenzo, for moderating this evening. I've been really looking forward to this panel discussion.
So for the last few days, I've thought to myself, white supremacists could have destroyed the US Capitol building when the Civil Rights Act was signed into law back in the 1960s. But that didn't take place because they did not have the powerful weapon of social media and the danger that exists in that. It is so common for white people to be exposed to white supremacy propaganda and learn how to hear and fear and hate minority groups by attending KKK rallies. And these right-wing groups can now reach anyone with their messages through social media, through the internet, promoting this violence and this hatred. So we can't just write these protesters off because they actually went to the US Capitol building. And I was not expecting that law enforcement to allow in DC to allow these right-wing thugs to walk right in. That's why we must have this conversation about race and democracy more than ever before to preserve our democracy. So before I welcome on our panelists, I do just want to remind everyone who's watching us tonight that we will have questions. And if you have questions for our panelists, please do use our Gallaudet Facebook page to enter those questions. Our university communication staff will be moderating those questions and sharing those with the panelists for us to discuss at the end of tonight's event. So Dr. Stern and Dr. McCaskill, you can go ahead and shut your videos off at this point.
Thank you.
I'm now going to go ahead and introduce our panelists for tonight, but let's first have all of them turn their videos on. Great. Hello, everyone. I really appreciate you being here with us tonight. This is a very important conversation for us to have. So I'd like us to start by having each of you share briefly a bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently doing for a living.
Hello there.
Yeah, whoever wants to kick it off.
Hello there. I'm Chris Johnson, CJ, and I grew up in Georgia in the South. And I'm now a teacher and an advocate and a leader in my deaf community.
Hello. My name is Victoria Monroe. I'm from Western Mississippi, so raised in the South, in the Bible Belt. About 45 minutes away from where Emmett Till died. So have experienced a variety of impressive experiences in my time. I'm currently CEO of Monroe Pedagogy. And so I focus on doing consulting work, specifically in the area of transformative justice. And I have an emphasis in racial justice.
Okay, hello. I'll go next. I'm Dr. Franklin Torres. I'm a faculty member at Gallaudet University in the Department of English, but I'm currently in another position working with our international offices with the focus on global learning and faculty administration working with our other faculty members in their projects internationally. I was raised in Lima, Peru, in South America, and lived there for most of my young life. And there also saw a great deal of oppression, discrimination, and so forth. When I was 16, I came to America, began living in a number of places around the country, and then settled in Maryland. Danielle?
Hi, my name is Danielle Thompson. I'm a professor at Gallaudet University in International Development. And I am also from an island in the Caribbean. I'm from the bigger island of Trinidad and Tobago. I moved here when I was 16, and I am proud to be an immigrant. I've been here 23 years now, and when I envision America, what I saw in my home country, in what I learned on TV, was really quite different than what I experienced in reality when I came here. So I had a rough journey, a rough transition, you could say, but I am still proud to be able to call myself an American.
Bravo. First of all, I just want to thank you, Dr. McCaskill. Thank you, Dr. Stern. Thank you, Lorenzo, for inviting us all to participate in this panel. I've really been looking forward to having this conversation with the other panelists. I'm Brandon Williams, and I was born in Dallas, Texas, raised in Arkansas, in southern Arkansas, and I was born to a Black deaf family on my father's side. My father is Black and deaf. My mother is white and deaf. And especially in terms of processing what's happening today, I'm looking at my mother's side of the family that is very strongly right-wing oriented, conservative, and evangelical Christian, and largely supportive of the current president, and the Black deaf side of my family, which has experienced historical costs of oppression. And having grown up navigating both of these experiences has hugely influenced how I perceive things. And that's sort of the lens that I bring to this conversation. And I graduated from Schools for the Deaf and went to Gallaudet University, and then now work at RIT as program coordinator for NTID for student life. and with a focus on diversity. And I give presentations, do consultation to different groups and the academic institution.
I just wanted to note that all of the panelists can go ahead and turn your videos off now, and then I'll proceed with signing the questions. So for our next question, I want to ask, what was going through each of your minds as you saw all of that political violence and domestic terrorism that occurred at the US Capitol building? And how did last week's events of Wednesday, January 6th impact you personally? CJ?
Sure. First of all, this is just raw, unprocessed, just telling you where I'm coming from. Where are our radical thinkers? Freedom is not simply gotten. It's worked for, toiled for day and night. That's the cost of freedom. And I have been thinking day after day, how many different levels of socioeconomic status come into play in being Black and deaf and navigating one's experience that way. Also, and looking back at history in World War I, World War II, how Black soldiers were flying across the world fighting for democracy that wasn't given to them when they returned home. They were second-class citizens, and I am still struck by that. Also, I want to add that Dr. Martin Luther King penned in his speech in 1967, he said that the country is made up of those with wealth and opportunity and those who are saddened and deprived of that opportunity. And then the events of just several days back have told us exactly what Dr. McCaskill has said. The Pandora's box has been opened and we see the other side of America.
A few things come to mind for me. First of all, I think about the safety of the people who were in that building, the politicians, the workers, and all of the others who were there. Recently, we found out that there were actually children in the building as well. And I just think about how much things could get worse as time goes on. I know some of you on this very panel live in DC. Will people continue to be safe? Will this threat rise to the level of expanding outward over these next few days? And so I'm just thinking about what is moving forward going to look like, because we see that this process is in motion. And so some things are never going to be the same. Things will be changing as a result of this. Now, as I think about the pandemic, I think it is a time for us to pause and reflect as an individual, to do some self-reflection about what our tendencies can be. I mean, often in life, we are on the go and we are not really attending to what's at stake. And the pandemic is forcing us to really slow down and to take a look at what is happening and to see all of this destruction and see the issues that need to be addressed. There are real problems here. The problems aren't new. They're not unique. When you look through history, you can see them time again, but this is a time for us to pause and really take them all in. And so for me, this is a clear example of white victimhood. Now, James Baldwin often said that white people are trapped in a history they don't understand. There is a lack of identity of who you are as a people, and they don't have that. And there is also ignorance combined with power, and that is the most caustic threat to justice. And I think that this is contributing both to oppression and the sense of I have rights. I'm the victim, even though I'm the one in the place of power. And that's what's leading to this destruction. And it's continued throughout our history. I don't want to take up all this space, and I could say more, but I just want to say that this is a sign of the things that have been pushed under the rug for quite some time.
Let me add to what Brandon has said. He talked about the combination of ignorance and power resulting in violence. There is a cognitive dissonance at play. Cognitive dissonance talks about a person who holds something so dear as fact and will not recognize that it is, in fact, opinion. And they cannot let go of it. Even in the face of proof, undeniable proof, they hold and cling to what they think is fact and is merely opinion. They hold that superior to reality. Now, for me personally, I also was deeply heartbroken by what I saw. I grew up in Mississippi, and I live in DC, just several blocks away from the US Capitol. And the kind of racial violence that I experienced in Mississippi, which is profoundly right-wing, and where I lived, just west of Mississippi, is in the Delta, the Mississippi Delta, strongly Black majority area. And once you get outside of the Delta, though, you're in really strongly right-wing territory. Delta life was unique with a great deal of hardship. And we faced a lot of racial oppression. We saw the KKK, saw them in life. And we saw white extremists. We saw them visibly there. And so seeing them present now in the Capitol brings back so many memories. It struck me on a very personal level. Also, I worked for Monroe Pedagogy, and in my work there, we are working to help to elevate the thinking and theoretical understanding of the events that have happened and that are happening in our world, so that we can come to a greater understanding of it. If you look at the police and their reaction to the extremists that came in there and how different that is. I have been at the other end of a police gun's barrel and looked at it, and it was a raw moment for me. And seeing that on the world stage brings to light how unfair this is at its root. And that's really what I've been thinking about since that day. I have not been able to stop thinking about that and how different that is. And as an educator, I want to know how we are going to teach this period of history to children. What are going to be the impacts of January 6th? And we are in a small community. And as Brendan said, very often with the combination of ignorance and power, education shows how that power plays out. And ignorance can trump knowledge, in fact, because of white violence and protest, if we don't teach truth about it. CJ, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, as I look back and have all of this brought to my face, I think there's this fear of losing voting rights, our power being gone, and wanting to preserve that power is what is felt in the white community. And as you talk about your experience in Mississippi with white vigilantes, the people who you saw in those white robes are now taking on a different form. And I'm just trying to understand and do some analysis. How can I feel safe in this world? How can I feel safe going out at night? It is important to get together with other people and socialize, but I've been thinking about what it is to be a Black deaf man in this world today.
Thank you, CJ, Brandon, Victoria. Now, if you would turn your screens off as we move on to the next question. DC police's reactions to Black Lives Matter protesters in the summer is starkly different than that at the Capitol. And now studies have shown, beyond just anecdotal evidence, we've now seen that police are twice as likely to use force against left-wing protests as they are in right-wing protests. So what might be some of the anti-racist responses to protect our rights to gather and protest and make it equitable? And for those that answer, please just pop on screen and respond.
Yeah, I want to respond to that question. First of all, I think it is so important that we look at transforming the police. Police brutality continues throughout the justice system. That is the case because of the economics that have been invested in the prison industrial complex. So we need to really transform capitalism, because a person is arrested and it leads to profit in the prison system. And that is because the justice system is set on really penalizing people, because the greater the number of years someone is sentenced to, the greater the profit will be made. So it is really the corruption that is inherent in the justice system itself. And there is a defense of that system. And the idea is, oh, well, we have this money that's a trade-off for providing restoration, when in fact that is a truly small percentage of what this money is doing. And money is power. So that is my view of the situation, that we call this a justice system, but it is not a system based in justice.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. Really, you speak to some really powerful points. And I have some similar comments, but first I have to ask myself, why do protests happen? I mean, of course, we all know that Martin Luther King's famous quote was that riot is the language of the unheard. So that also creates another question. What is it that America has failed to hear? That's a significant question that we really got to dig into. What is it that America has so long failed to hear, failed to attend to and change? If we address that, the need for the protests isn't there. We've got to address that underlying issue. And then another thing that's kind of related to what Victoria was saying, we have got to stop calling the police for everything. Police are not trained to de-escalate situations. And the proof is absolutely apparent in how the police are biased to Black people. And the most polite, peaceful protests will meet with force and still meet abuse, still meet violence from the police. And then look at the raucous, rowdy affair that took place at the Capitol, and the doors were opened for them. People were harassing the police, and still the police did very little. And so, calling the police is a political act. The police serve some people in a democratic society. Who is there? We need to invite people to have those conversations with us and hold them accountable. Franklin, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah. As I am watching these comments, I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, I don't think the right word for the events of the day is protest. We need to call it what it was. It was a riot. What took place on Capitol Hill was against the workers who were working there, and it was destruction of property. What I'd like to do is make a comparison at this point. I'd like to talk about DACA, Deferred Action for Children. And there had been a lot of debate about DACA for children who were brought to the US underage as immigrants. A pathway was set up for them, and there was a protest where people went in defense of DACA, marching to see their senators, to see their congresspeople. The police were lined up in response to that protest. What we saw on January 6th was a completely different set of events. So if the people who rioted the Senate building felt they needed something to discuss with their senators, there's a way to do that. The way they approached Capitol Hill was not the American way. It was not the democratic way of behaving.
Thank you.
And so what I see is that was a riot.
And the slogan of the police is always to protect and serve. But we got to ask, who's being protected? Who's being served? You're supposed to be protecting the people from harm, right? But what kind of police force is trained to target people the way they are? We've got to unpack what's happening in training of police. I think there are underlying questions there. What are the implications of that slogan to protect and serve? Dig into that. I think we really have to look at reducing the use of police and looking at more mental health providers, people that can provide assistance when you're in need. Also, Brendan was talking about racial bias in policing, and that has been clearly shown. Police are much more harmful to Black communities and people of color. And so also when we're looking at the advent of for-profit prisons, in Newark, New Jersey, they recently announced that they are trying not to use guns for a year. So that program has been in place for a year, trying to use guns as little as possible. And so police there are looking at the success of the reduction in injuries of Black and brown people in their policing in Newark. But that's a way of creating a more equitable way of policing. Brendan, did you want to add something?
I did. I'd like to add to that. I think we need to think about intention. What was the intention of this protest? Now, I agree, protest isn't really the right word, but what was the intention of this riot, of this insurrection, as Victoria called it? There were police who knew and were in support of these actions. There were politicians and Secret Service individuals actually supporting this. And this is made clear with Ted Cruz, with Donald Trump, and the like. And so I think for Black people, watching that was just a clear sign of white privilege, of white supremacy operating in the system of police, the system of politicians, seeing the system at work in support of white supremacy. And so it was, even though it wasn't surprising, it was still a traumatic event to see what was taking place. People who have experienced trauma can identify trauma, but when it happens, the impact is still there. So when people lose that perspective, I think people lose the perspective and don't realize or don't know this insurrection was by design. And people see that something happened, but I think, there are people who just want freedom, who have worked so hard for justice, to have these conversations, trying to create these conversations, but we try to do that work, and the end result is death, destruction, and harm. Even though we're trying to engage in things and be flexible, and we have legitimate reasons for what we're working towards, this is still how it all plays out.
Virginia, did you want to add something? Yes, I was going to say that a lot of times when we're talking about this inner insurrection, when we look at how very often police are encouraged to harm and hurt Black and brown people, but when you see what the U.S. Capitol Police did with Black Lives Matter protesters, come on. How are we not teaching them the value of Black life? And you can see the disparate treatment and the groups got. So we have to question, why is our movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is all about valuing Black life, preserving Black life, and getting police to change their tactics and to end police brutality. But for this simple, baseless reason of this lie, they go and storm the Capitol. What reason did they even have to protest? Because they were upset that they lost, and that's it. And that's partisanism. This country is nonpartisan at nature. It's democratic.
So thank you, Victoria, Brandon, and Franklin. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next question. So for our panelists who have lived outside of the United States, America is often considered the world's last superpower, the greatest democracy. What are the international implications of the perception of what happened at the Capitol on Wednesday? Will this permanently impact how the world views the United States of America?
Hello.
Hi, Danny.
We'll respond to that. As a person who's lived outside of the US for many years and then moved here as an immigrant, America has always seemed a country full of power. You know, the idyllic life, roses everywhere, everything somebody could want. But then, when Americans travel to other countries, they kind of get the red carpet treatment. Now, that's white Americans when they travel. Now, Black Americans, if they have money, they can maybe get that special treatment. But since Trump has won the presidency, the world has started to question that vision of America. That's not the America they've always known. And they see how times are changing. Over the last 4 years, I think there's been a growing suspicion and distrust, growing concern about America. After what we saw last Wednesday, that's completely shredded the world's view of America. My daughter is 8 years old, and her birthday was on that day, and we were busy doing a birthday celebration. My whole family, and we're an international family across the country, across the globe, and so they were all texting, saying, "Wait, do you see what's happening in America? What's going on? Are you watching the news?" I had no idea, and I turned on the news, and I didn't think it was going to be much of anything. So I turned on the news though, and then I saw the white man scaling the doors at the Capitol. And my kids are right there. And these are brown skinned kids watching this happen and say, Mom, look at that. What's happening? And I had to explain to them what was happening that day. My daughter said, I don't think that's safe. America's not safe. I think maybe we should leave and go back to our family over in Europe. I don't think we're safe here in the US. My daughter was born and raised here in the US. And that's her take on this now. That's really how the world sees us. We are weakened in the eyes of the world. We're not the strong people we were before.
Franklin? Yeah. I think about my own experiences growing up in Peru. I mean, and not only my own experiences, but those in the community around me, and the power that there was when we talked about looking up to America, the idea that you would have people who would visit my country and we would say, oh yeah, look at those Americans, they support us. I would have this idea that Americans were nice, both through what I saw on TV and those who visited the country. Moving here, I've realized that that's not per se exactly the truth. We have a variety of humans and no one is perfect in any country. And that has borne out in the United States and what I've seen. On the day of the riot, I thought it looked like it was happening somewhere else. I didn't think that was actually taking place in America, that was our capital here here in the United States. I thought this has to be somewhere else. I was like, what are they doing? And you saw the police there, not even seeming to try to engage at all. And I was just like, this cannot be. They need to be protecting the Capitol building, the senators. I imagine if there had been individuals from the Black Lives Matters movement or any people of color, for sure the reaction would have been the opposite. There would have been brutality, there would have been batons, there would have been pepper spray. There wouldn't have been this soft shoed response. And I just thought, this is not our America. So many people in other countries struggle financially, and there's this idea of the United States as the white savior, helping out those other countries. But on the back end, there is this cronyism, this exchange of money that's taking place behind the scenes. Let me give you one example with Haiti or Guatemala. America is always helping with an agenda. They may be asking the US for help, and they might be intervening to help with so-called terrorists. But what's really taking place there is that destabilization has been the effect from the United States. And so the way that the United States engages with other countries is truly inappropriate. So really, if you look more deeply and you unpack this mentality in white people, there's this idea like, oh yes, this is a democracy here. But if you dig deeper, you see that it is not a true democracy at play.
I also want to add, on Wednesday, we didn't just show the world America, but we showed them that American terrorism is real. I think, people have said, there's this uproar with BLM and this thing people are saying there's white supremacy, but I think on Wednesday that was really apparent. It was shown clearly in the police reaction to white supremacists compared to how they reacted with BLM people. I think it was a good thing. It just bared it all and showed it for real. This is a real problem here in America. It is not a rose garden here. It's not something that's just a problem to be spoken of here and there. It's a raw wound in America. And this is not America's proudest hour, not on the world stage.
Yeah, if I could just add a bit more to this. Of course, I had friends in Peru texting me, asking about what was happening, just as Danny said. There's this perception that America is great. But this showed the world the way that white supremacy is at play in our country. So I had deaf friends reaching out to me who I got on the video phone with, and we were having video chats in our native sign language, explaining what was taking place so that they could better understand. Because again, I was dispelling for them that myth that America was this magical place where everything was just so. And I explained to them about the way that people have been hurt in Black Lives Movement protests, and they could see firsthand the way that these individuals were treated. And yes, a couple people did die. But when you look at the number of arrests and when they took place, they were deferred. They didn't happen in the moment. Whereas when there's a Black Lives Matter protest, you might see hundreds of people arrested within an hour. There's even been this asking for help identifying the faces, and it's like, come on, police, that's your job. Get it done.
Thank you for sharing that international perspective. I think very often the average American is not really aware of international perspectives. Okay, if you would go ahead and minimize your screen as I ask the next question. So our former president, Barack Obama, wrote of the US Constitution. It wasn't a perfect document. But it allowed for the inhumanity of slavery and failed to guarantee women and even men who didn't own property the right to participate in the political process. Obama said, but embedded in this document was a North Star that would guide future generations, a system of representative government, a democracy through which we could better realize our highest ideals. So, two parts to this question. Do you agree or disagree with Obama's faith in the possibility of American democracy? And what will you do, if anything, to preserve democracy, democratic ideals, and to help create a more perfect America? So whoever would like to respond, thank you. So I'll start with you, Brandon.
So personally, I don't necessarily believe that democracy is right or wrong. I mean, I do think that some people have faith in this system, and there are other people who do not. I think the goal of continuing to try and fight and work regardless is still there. In conversations I've had within the Black community about racism, I've encountered many people who've said that racism will never be fully resolved, but we must have the mindset of continuing to fight to better our society, to better our situation for ourselves, for our children, for our community. I think truly we need to define what democracy is to us. What just happened is a stain on our democracy. People have been forced into slavery. And people in the United States were hands off when almost 6 million Jewish people were murdered. Black men and Black women have been murdered. Boys and girls, transgender individuals have been murdered by the police. Women don't have autonomy over their own bodies. We stood by in the case of the Holocaust. We've dropped bombs on people. When we're talking about this standard of democracy, what are we talking about if we're talking about America? Because this includes our relationships with other countries. Is it true that America should be better than other countries? Because if that is my belief as an American, in my mind, that supremacy aligns with white supremacy and not truly with the idea of justice. If you're familiar with that concept of manifest destiny, it's this idea that God has ordained America to be God's chosen country. And that's a very white supremacist idea, that it's somehow our God-given right to have this place in the world. There is a wonderful book called Conversations with God, which I recommend to anyone, regardless of your background, regardless of your ideals. And there's a quote from that book which says, "The best gift that can be given to another person is something that causes them to remember." So yes, it is a bit about self-awareness, but it's also about causing myself to unpack, to remember, to find that truth that can be shared. Because that shared truth and knowledge is worthless unless we discover it and share it.
Brandon, Thank you. That was beautifully put. And I stand with Brandon. You know, Obama's perspective, it was Obama's, and we all have different perspectives, but I absolutely believe in civil thinking and civil discourse. America has had a loss of civic thinking, if you will, and that goes back to education. The way people learn is often very old-fashioned and outmoded. We are in the 21st century now. And what's happening today and moving forward may be taught in the old ways without the authentic representation of that represented in the curriculum. But we need more truth in our curriculum with our kids. They need to understand the whys of things, why these things have happened in our world. And I think that's really at the root. In education, we have to have a real emphasis on democracy and what it means to be democratic. I think, secondly, my belief is that in America, we love to look at the parties. We look at the parties in all kinds of different ways. We look at how they embody white supremacy in the right wing, for example. I think the parties' systems are designed to perpetuate white supremacy. They absolutely are. Change in these political systems is long overdue. It's the 21st century. The kinds of two-party systems that we have now have to be examined. Those apply to a world that is no more. We're going to look at the ideologies that are present in this party system and how they're not aligned with the way that we live today, the technologies that we have today, the world that we live in, and the 21st century. And whether progressive or liberal, right-wing, Democrat, we run a whole gamut. I think we have to have more of a focus on being equitable to all. And I think the whole notion of political parties can stand in the way of that. And you have to look at the ideologies that support those parties. And also, if you look at the government and our understanding of political parties, right wing, for example, they are really existing in defiance of democracy. Part of the reason that we have the violence and uproar in our community right now is because we don't have the value that placed on democracy that is due.
CJ, yeah, if I can just add to that, we need to think about how white privilege is truly used, and we need to unpack that. In the House, 10 Republicans voted to impeach Trump. We have to think about the founding fathers and the whiteness contained within the system. And there has been some change, but this change is truly, truly taking place at a snail's pace. So unpacking the teaching and showing children the truth, but with integrity. We need to think about how we can move forward and how we teach and unpack the lessons of our history to students so that they can think critically about this, so that we can move our society forward.
I want to say something about how we create a better America in our future. I see that America in my children. When they bring home their homework from school, like in January, of course, we have Black History Month, we have Martin Luther King's birthday. I have to tell you, I am not satisfied with what I see. They learn that, oh, Martin Luther King was this important person in history and a little bit about American civil rights, but I want an honest curriculum that tells children that, yes, there has been pain and ugliness in the history of America. We have to have authentic curriculums that really discuss racism. It has to be embedded in our conversations day in, day out. It can't be something that's there for a season and gone. It has to be infused in everything. If we are honestly educating, then I can see a better future at play for my children, for Black and brown children.
Yeah, Franklin, take it away. Yeah, I mean, I agree truly with what was said, and I believe that education is where change can take place. When I got to the United States as a young person, I went into history class and they were teaching about history and the like. Now, you have to understand that at my time, I was still acquiring English, and though I did learn the language quickly, I liked to read and whatnot, I was still in the acquisition phase. So the teacher would touch upon these topics in sort of a superficial way. But I was so intrigued and I wanted to learn more and delve more deeply into the stories. I would come into class the following day and tell the teacher, well, you didn't get into this piece of it. And the teacher would sort of brush me off saying, well, I mean, we're not getting to get into all of that today. And so what I see there is a brainwashing of sorts. Like Victoria said, we're in the 21st century. Things are changing quickly. This information is out there online. There's opportunities to unpack for yourself. The information is there. Just do a Google search. I also want to remind everyone as we think about our governmental system, we see the people in power are people who went to these Ivy League institutions like Harvard, like Yale. Again, these traditional institutions. So we're teaching children, hoping that they will grow, encouraging them to go to these good universities. But we need things to change. The Constitution was written quite some time ago, and change is slow to take place. So we need to revisit democracy and how democracy can change. Of course, equality and the rights of people is important. We need to think about how this plays out in elections. And that's the ideal, but is it really taking place? There are lots of countries out there where women are second-class citizens, where rapes and murder are commonplace. Democracy needs to be revisited on the whole. There are dictatorships still across the world that are slow to change. And so America is a superpower, but it's still a problem. There's still problems in America.
And see, CJ, did you want to say something more? Yeah. I've seen a lot of discussion about democracy, but I want to talk about deaf ed and schools for the deaf, residential schools for the deaf for a minute. Because it's there, based on my experience. I remember having staff say, hey, take that poster down. It's not Black History Month anymore, right? How many schools for the deaf out there have Black role models and don't have any exposure to Black people and to Black history? And that's deprived. Those students are deprived of that. And that adds more and more layers of oppression, compounding each upon each other. And so when people grow up, maybe they'll see their first Black, deaf politician. That's what I want to see. Where are Black politicians today, And I think we need that exposure out there.
Victoria, yeah. I just want to hone in on this idea of democracy. I want to look at this from different angles. Okay, we can talk about the US Constitution. I know there's a couple different signs for that, but when we talk about our founding fathers, it's very interesting because every single one of them was a slave owner. I'm trying to remember the year 17. But the point is, okay, for 200 or 300 years, looking into the future from those founding fathers, we had this political party system moving forward. So the founding fathers finalized the US Constitution, and it had an impact in a variety of ways in terms of different movements going forward. So the US Constitution was something that it was unclear if it would remain static or change. And it has been interesting how it has played out over time in the women's movement, in the civil rights movement, as we talk about what does it mean to be a democracy. And we see the way that the US government has been a colonizer. Is that truly what it means to be a democracy? Is to be a colonizer? That's food for thought. So when those interesting events took place on January 6th, we've entered into discussions about the idea of preserving democracy, that we must retain our democracy in America. So regardless of party, the idea is that we are humanity here, and we need to preserve our humanity. Whoever is leading the country is going to affect us. Regardless of facts, regardless of the evidence that exists, there is this misinformation campaign out there against democracy. So we need the successor to come in to this system and take over so that we can think about what it means to truly be a democracy, because this coup is honestly affecting the way the world views us and our democracy here.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. Now, you can all turn your screens off before I ask some of the questions we have from our audience members. So now, where do we go from here? What are next steps? Brandon?
So I'm thinking of a quote by Shakespeare, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple. The past is prologue. And what that means is that the past cannot be separated from the present. And I mention that quote because as I think about all of the things that I've read through and studied, as we look at our society, okay, I believe this was Abraham Lincoln in 1862, prior to becoming president, who did not want him to become president. And I just feel like there's a parallel with that here. It makes me think about who was the president before Abraham Lincoln. So I went to do some research. It was James Buchanan. And there was a lot of unrest in the time of James Buchanan. There was the possibility of civil war at hand. And James Buchanan had this indifference to that, this attitude of nonchalance. And basically had this idea that slavery wasn't that important of an issue. So I think that there is a parallel there. I think there's a relationship between the way that presidents change over time. And I think that Trump is the worst president in US history. When you think about the finances of our current situation and philosophical beliefs, values, principles, there's this golden three. You think about states versus federal rights, the economic differences in the North and South. which laws should take precedence. For example, when we think about laws like whether abortion is allowed in given areas, states' rights versus federal rights. Back then, slavery was permitted in some states and outlawed in others. And again, there was that dispute of federal rights versus state rights. The abolitionist movement as well was this idea of people being against slavery, and the abolitionist movement was growing. After Trayvon Martin was murdered, you saw a similar growth in the movement of the Black Lives Matter movement. You see this spreading throughout all the states, a unified protest taking place. And my fifth and final reason, the election of Abraham Lincoln was the turning point. These are the 5 causes of the Civil War and why I think we might be on a similar path. Do we have a parallel happening here? Is history repeating itself? These are questions that I think it's important to consider. I don't think I'm fear-mongering here. I'm just genuinely asking. Are we at this point where history is repeating itself? And what could or should we do to do something different? I'm sorry that this is quite a long answer at this point, but in some of my studies, I'm not the most religious person, but I like to study about it. There is a theory out there that is piety versus prophecy. So there's the idea of my individual relationship with God, how I benefit, how I grow, how God influences me, which is piety. And then prophecy is how we engage together, how we envision our future, what it looks like, looking towards the future based on our involvement in it. So it is a group decision, an investment in this prophecy as the future. And so my point is, as we move along, how do we balance that? Making sure that we're feeding ourselves, our growth, our accountability, our introspection, our knowledge, and at the same time, also making sure that we're contributing to the greater good, to the collective, because that's an important thing moving forward. And my concern with these social justice movements and the like is that they often become more on the individual than on the community scale. How will I benefit from social justice personally? And again, I just see this cycle showing up as we are here in 2021 now.
And I just wanted to also say the one thing that we could do to move forward in some small way with our deaf community is very often deaf organizations and associations are very white-centric in how they've been run. For example, this last summer, I was asked if I would work with a local organization. And a lot of members of that organization were talking about all lives matter. And I wanted to address this issue with them so that they understood how that acts as a rebuttal to Black Lives Matter. And I wrote a motion for discussion for a discussion of all lives matter and Black Lives Matter issues. And there was a vote of the organization on it, and they voted to close discussion. And I was the only person of color in that entire room of white people in the organization. And it was clear that I was the bringer of the motion and that it failed resoundingly. And so I was coming there to work with them and educate them about the issue, and it completely fell through because it operates on a white supremacist basis. Its foundation is centered in that, and we have to dismantle that system before we can see real progress happening. Victoria?
Yeah. I just want to emphasize that this is a cycle, and education is key. When we talk about ignorance, we're talking about a lack of education. So the best way for us to achieve this equality, to achieve this justice, is to start teaching white babies, your white babies, that you have some privilege and to start talking about racism from birth. Black and brown babies are taught how to survive in the world from birth. But white babies are raised without these conversations until they get to a point in life when they realize that there is some difference. And often they have affinity bias at that point, like, oh, no, I'm not racist, even though they've already obtained that power and it's already been internalized. So we have a higher probability of changing their minds, their hearts, their souls, changing who they are if we start from birth with these white babies and talk to them about their white privilege, teach them about it. They are our future. As they grow up and go out into the world, they'll be in a better position to fight that injustice. So we need to think about how education is taking place. We need to start young. When children start to acquire language, we're talking about just a few months of age. Start talking about race then, from the moment they can communicate. That is key. If you have children of your own or other children in your life who you meet, have an impact on them. You can have these meaningful conversations. Maybe it's your niece, maybe it's your nephew, maybe it's just your friend's kid who you hang out with. These are all opportunities because kids' brains are ready to take in this information. They are born as clean slates. Teach them about the meaning of racism before it gets embedded in who they are. So start these conversations young.
CJ, did you have something? Well, I wanted to add to what you were talking about the future. And there's a book by John Lewis, Congressman Lewis, the civil rights leader of many and many a year who fought for so long for civil rights. The book is entitled Crossing That Bridge, A Vision of Change for Future America. So I want to quote what he says there. He says that the history depends on the reminders of power, and nothing can stop us. The power of commitment, the power of a determined people to make a difference in society. I want to call on us to look at what our next steps are. Just as one example, Lorenzo, you there in your work with CDDA, you're taking those steps. You're creating those partnerships with deaf organizations, helping to open hearts and minds and bring together people to greater understanding in our deaf community. That's a first step. Thank you all for
your answers.
Franklin.
Go ahead, Franklin Torres. Yeah, I agree. As we're talking about children and what they learn, it's not just that. It's also about training our teachers. We have lots of teachers who are just teaching to what's in the book, but they need to engage in the communities. And we need to think about that concept of being an ally and the way that that can be applied in their teaching. And again, it's about actually visiting and interacting with a variety of communities, especially for deaf children. Suppose we're talking about children who grow up in families with no signing. These children will take on whatever they acquire. Sometimes parents will communicate with what limited gestures they have to convey a bias that those students will then internalize. We need teachers to be the ones to bring that wide variety of perspectives to students. As we talk about students being in high school age, even internationally traveling abroad, this can be an experience doing some study abroad as a junior or a senior to literally see the world and to understand the diversity that exists out there. And so again, I think there's so much unpacking that needs to be happening in the 21st century educational environment.
Well, I wanted to follow up on what Franklin was saying. You're absolutely right, Dr. Torres. These kids need real world experiences, but we also need teacher preparation programs to take this into consideration. They need to look at how white centric they have always been. And that has to change if we're going to teach in different ways and teach children in new and better ways.
So for our panelists today, if you could please just briefly share some concrete steps that we can do as we're committing to doing this tomorrow, next month, next year's, to work towards healing ourselves, each other, and the country. If you could just briefly respond to that question.
I'll start off with Monroe pedagogy. We've got a lot in the works and a lot of plans going, but one of the things that we do and invest in heavily is dialogue and allow for vulnerability. Many people will not allow that vulnerability, but you cannot have true understanding grow within those kinds of constraints. And you have to have dialogue. You have to have dialogue. And it's one thing to read a thing and look and see that there's unrest in the world, but that has to lead to conversations. Book clubs are a common approach to this sort of thing. You can get together with your friends and share real world experiences and examine those through conversation. That's how you can really start to understand more. Book clubs are not sufficient in and of themselves, because you don't read a thing and internalize it. You experience a thing and then it becomes infused in who you are. And so if you have Black and brown friends, do they go to your home? If they don't go to your home, why are they not visiting your home? And why have you not invited them into your home to share a meal? Start with that. Start with that as an activity, right? And then I cannot tell you how strongly I support the notion of dialogue. We've got issues. We've got it. America's got issues. And that's the only way to go with it. Franklin?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Yeah, I mean, Victoria, I think what you said about dialogue is so key. We need to have those intercultural exchanges. You and I may bring different perspectives based on the cultures in which we were raised as we get together and have those conversations yet. So it's important to think about one's upbringing and to share those insights. I just want to emphasize, as we talk about dialogue, the idea of having intercultural dialogues coming together is important. Having openness in those conversations is important. Allow ourselves to unpack those where we're coming from and think outside the box throughout that process.
CJ, go ahead. No, after you then. Denny?
Okay. I just want to add, for those of you who have international family and friends, make sure that you're sharing that education to them about what's taking place in the United States, because I know if I hadn't done that with my family, well, let me just back up. My father's Indian and I am half Black. My family's all over the world. And often they don't understand all of the same information that I do. So I invest some of my time to educating my family about US history so they have a greater understanding of what the reality of America is. Because often there's this idea like America is this land of plenty where everything goes just so. And I have to help them understand some of that dark underbelly that is in our history.
I absolutely endorse what you say about dialogue, but also action. We got to reach out to our youth. We got to get those youth in and create leaders out of them. That kind of action is needed too. National Black Deaf Advocates, NAD, all of these deaf organizations need to be reaching out to a broader audience. Reach out to the rural areas, get those kids that don't have those opportunities to be in those dialogues you're talking about. The more concrete actions that we can take, the more we can reach out to get those youth in and grow leaders out of them. That increases the number of dialogues available across the country for all of us. Brendan?
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to add to this. Lean into the discomfort. Some things might be moments where you're like, whoa, I did not realize that, and are going to take you outside of your comfort zone. You're going to need to do some research. You're going to need to learn a bit more about what that privilege is. Because often we as humans, it can invest too much in philosophy and theory and having the right idea, but we forget that there is that privilege and there's violence in that privilege. You know, as we think about just going on our day-to-day life, going on a walk, meeting someone in the store, and we might recoil in fear, thinking this person is going to steal from me. And that is not insignificant. It can be a traumatic experience and actually conveys violence. So your privilege is a deprivation of someone else if it's something that you can do comfortably that someone else cannot. And it doesn't make you a terrible person to have that privilege, but you must recognize your place in society and recognize that other people do not have that same privilege. I can share a personal experience with you. I grew up being against women's rights, being homophobic. I had internalized these mindsets. And looking back, I see that I have changed a lot. And that change is not only a benefit to the way that other people are oppressed, it's a benefit to me. And I'm not trying to say I'm perfect or I've figured it all out yet. I'm just trying to say this has made me a better person as I have become decolonized in my own way of thinking. And some people may disagree with this way of thinking, but I believe that white supremacy victimizes white people too. The system hurts all of us. This idea is that white supremacy benefits white people and it's really a benefit to them, but it's actually not allowing them to think for themselves. So it's really doing harm to them as well because it's not allowing to live fully as human beings. So that idea that the system is actually helping anyone is truly a myth.
Thank you all. That's so beautifully said. We have one more question from the audience. If you'll all minimize your screens and I'll ask the question. So Victoria mentioned in her answer that the recent upheavals last week on January 6th at the US Capitol showed that they weren't fighting for party, they weren't fighting for principle, but fighting for a man who merely lost. So what can we do in our daily lives to encourage people to know that losing is okay, even when it hurts, even if we disagree with the outcome, which is critical in a democracy?
Yeah, that is an excellent, excellent question. Often in the United States, there's this idea that children are innocent. And there is an impact to that way of thinking. There is a lack of social, emotional intelligence that we see playing out in our current presidency. That inability to accept a loss, to take the word no, as it were. And this is important for children to learn. The more they learn about social emotional health, the more they will be better as adults. They need to hear that word no, to get that word no. I mean, kids don't know better. How do they learn that? They need to be guided through that process to grow that social emotional intelligence and to grow the whole child. So there's a lack of social emotional learning that's taking place, and we need to teach that. We need to educate the whole child and to teach them how to lose well.
Okay, Brandon. Well, when I look at Trump, I don't see it as simply as Trump lost and that's it. I think there's more to it, because Trump is like when you're on the freeway, right? And just out of the blue, somebody comes reeling into your lane, right? Trump is taking advantage of that, and he's in that car, right? He's in that bandwagon, and they are just hauling onto that freeway. But again, I don't think it's as simple as win or lose. Trump gave them the space and gave them the vehicle for what they wanted to achieve, right? And so Trump has created deep mistrust. And so Pence has been his vice president, loyal and to a fault all the way to the end, until in the end, Trump stabbed him in the back. Trump will betray anyone and everyone, because he will not admit he's wrong. He will not accept it. And anybody who disagrees with him, they could have been his most staunch ally, but come to any disagreement with him at all, and he cuts them off completely. And in 2016, when that happened, and our January 6th correction of the interpretation, when that happened, I think there was a betrayal there. If you saw, the Blue Lives Matter flag was there, right? And the people holding that were screaming, we should hang Pence. That right there shows you this was a divisive election. And it wasn't a matter of just red and blue states. This is really about our whole social identity as a country, of what we think this country looks like. I don't think we've got full answers here yet. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just say that this deserves a lot more exploration. It's not so simple as win or lose.
Well, I see that our time is up, so I'm going to ask you to turn your cameras off. I want to say thank you so much to all of our audience members tonight and all that you've contributed. As we wrap up tonight, I want everyone who's watching to be mindful of the dangers of social media and of factions. We cannot let algorithms, hatred, and tribes divide us. We must live up to our democratic ideals here at home first, which includes fighting against racism, welcoming differences, for us to truly be a healthy democracy. I also want to encourage everyone to attend Gallaudet's upcoming events hosted by CDDA and the President's Office from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Tuesday night. And the Facebook event will be titled The Night Before the Inauguration, Looking Back and Ahead. It will be discussing the inauguration, and it will be featuring Alex Ebenchunachan from the Daily Moth, as well as Leila Henuami from Sign Vote, David Bahar from Deaf Capital, and Lindsay Dunn, professor of Deaf Studies at Gallaudet University. The university president, Bobby Cordano, will also be closing out that event. I want to thank everyone. I want to say stay safe, remain well, and good night, everybody. Take care.